Namaskar. Let's talk about practical exams, whether it was a practical exam with us or it was a practical exam with someone else. Generally speaking, some of the guidelines are pretty much similar. One is that you should know your lesson plan. Whether you develop the lesson plan yourself as you would in our system, or whether it's a particular style that has a preset lesson plan, you should know the lesson plan from the beginning to the end by heart. If it's obviously easier for someone who comes from a system where, say for example, they have to know a couple of dozen techniques or even a few dozen techniques, it's going to be an easier class for them to run because of repetition of doing it for years as a student, then later on as an intern, and in the future as a teacher. So that's one big thing. The other thing is, and these are not in a list by priority, but I'll throw some of these things out. One is the punctuality of running your class on time and finishing on time. If it's a lesson plan where we've set it up for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, you're actually doing that for a reason. And the reason why is, for example, let's say it's a gym or health club, and they have a 60-minute allotment for your time. What will happen is this: if you end up 5 minutes early and you shut it off, and that's it, we're all done, 55 minutes, that's all you get, your class will stampede the front desk and they will try to get you fired. That's real life, okay? On an exam, that may cost you 5 points, but the point is that will cost you your job if you're out there actually teaching for someone else. Maybe in your own studio you can pull off whatever you want and get away with it. But generally speaking, your students won't like it and they won't keep coming back. Punctuality, over the years I've seen all kinds. Somebody who shows up an hour late for their class, somebody who shows up 15 minutes late for their class. Imagine showing up 15 minutes late for your practical exam on exam day. I don't know why anyone would pass. That's one. You certainly wouldn't hold a job that way. It won't be long before they get rid of you. The other thing is, in the beginning, instead of jumping right out there and doing everything right away, and by that I mean instead of having an opening that's formal, you just start doing whatever. Let's just do sun salutations from the very beginning. Don't address anyone, don't have a greeting, don't have a rooting, don't have a time for getting centered, none of that. Let's just jump right into the lesson plan. Take your time. There's an opening just like there's a closing. It depends on the school, but I think it's a wise idea to have precautions. One general precaution is, those of you with high blood pressure should have already told me that. And if you do have high blood pressure, we know that anytime you bring your head below the heart, it's an inversion. So if it's one of those things where you should have talked to me about it ahead of time, maybe you should avoid inversions and talk to me after class. This way we're not interrupting, say, something or compromising someone's privacy. So what they're doing is they're hearing a warning, and this would be the first and most common thing, blood pressure. And what happens is they don't have to raise their hand and go, by the way, that's me. No, you don't want that because of the way there are new laws concerning privacy, depending on where you live, and not everybody's supposed to know about your health. The other one, as far as precautions, most common would be, for example, there are a number of students who are pregnant. They actually belong in prenatal classes. If you've listened to my lectures before, you already know my opinion about this. And one is, there's 2 lives at stake now, so why would you jump into a class where there's going to be any kind of risk factor. It's just one of those things. So I don't have to just think about me, I have to think about two people. That's the beginning of it. So the precaution there, if you're pregnant, you don't belong in my class. That's it. You belong in a prenatal class. If you're running the prenatal class, you don't have to give that warning, because here it is. You know, we're all together and the students are all pregnant. That's fine. Then we address first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, which are all different lesson plans, and postnatal. Another thing, you don't have to name every precaution. It's just one of those things where blood pressure, especially usually high, is a major issue. I'm not saying low blood pressure. I want to throw that under the bus and just let it go, and that is a concern as well. But these are things that you should cover in your forms when they sign up and in the interview process. And that's the reason why I don't take students who just walk in 5 minutes late into class. You just can't. You have to know how they're doing. And in some cases, you're going to have to do some thinking for them. Oh, really? I'm 8 months pregnant. Why can't I take a class right now? It's my first one. And let's do hot vinyasa. It's really, that person should be stopped. Please don't do that. Go to a prenatal class. Next, after the opening, the class should have some warm-ups of some kind. The warm-ups that are circular, some people add a little bit of Kundalini in the beginning of a class. Some people do sun salutations. Those are all good. The only thing about sun salutations is that sun salutations don't have the side-to-side or lateral movement that, say, you can get out of circular movement. The knee circles are out unless one knee is in the air, and that's the one where you're going, and that's more about hip rotation anyway. As far as warm-ups go and how much you should do, well, it really does depend on the season and the age of the group. So, for example, when I'm warming up a group of teenagers, it's much different than, say, when I'm teaching my chair yoga class and my median age in the class is 75. We're going to spend a little bit more time for those students who are a little bit older, and we're going to make sure that all of our parts are warmed up. The other thing is, by the season, the same thing goes here. If it's hot outside, chances are we don't have to warm up as long as it would be for, say, for example, this past winter was exceptional up here, and I would say your warm-ups, you'd want to have them a little bit longer. Other things about on your practical exam that are really important. One is, observe your students. Do not look at the wall and just ignore them and suddenly think that this is your own practice, because when you're running a class, this is not personal practice time. Adjusting. When to adjust, as I have mentioned different times, when somebody has form and it looks like they're going to hurt themselves, that's a priority. If somebody looks like they're going to fall over or take out 2 or 3 other students because for one reason or another, it could be a domino effect, we can't have that. So adjusting is necessary. Getting off my mat is important. Walking around the room. Some people say walking the room. Some people say working the room. The point is, move around so you can see different angles, because those people who hide out in the back, some of them are very comfortable with what they're doing and they may be seasoned students. Some of them may be new and you really want to see what they're doing. The other thing is, there's a big difference between a teacher who provides a piece of the pie and one who provides the complete experience. And by that, I'll go with this. Some teachers, they have it so that you just went to a theme park, and so you actually had a class where it was from beginning to end the yogic experience. Some teachers, I'm not criticizing, it's like, let's do a sauna practice, and that's the main course, and that's all you're getting. And that's just one example. But as an example, somebody who has a lesson plan set up and they have a pranayama integrated into it, a meditation, warm-ups, and the complete experience, that's really, I mean, here's a good example. You go to a restaurant and they serve you multiple courses. Or you go to another restaurant and they serve you a veggie burger. It is what it is. I suppose it's this way. If I'm crammed for time and I want lunch, then I take the abbreviated experience. But if I have time, I want the complete experience. Lastly, the closing. After you've done everything, make sure you finish up. After, say, for example, meditation is over and everyone is chilled out, some parting words of wisdom always help, or something that's feel good. So if you do all those things, then what happens is your class is really has much more body to it than, say, for example, addressing the small variation. On a practical exam, it really does depend too on your school. If you're outside mine, for example, and it's fitness yoga and that's all there is, that's okay. Then when in Rome, do as the Romans do. With that in mind, I bid you farewell. Namaste.